Alrighty, so it's another busy Friday, and excitingly enough, if things go the way they're supposed to, I have somebody set up to edit it and make it even fancier than my basic understanding of YouTube. So
Whoa.
there might be shorts, there might be intros, there might be outros, there might just be us, but either way, the next 15 minutes will give you something fun to learn. Nick, how's your week going?
Busy as heck. Like just so busy. I feel like we recorded this last one
Mhm.
um yesterday and it was over a week ago at this point. Um because we recorded the last one early.
That's right.
Um and so like I'm just so much is flying at me and I'm getting ready next week. I'm going to go to Salt Lake City to talk at Christian Brindle's six-figure Medicare agent conference. He very nicely asked if I would run a breakout room for him, talking about final expense and Medicare and how they work together, and just a lot to do in that not very much time. So
Sure,
very
right.
exciting things.
Which is a perfect transition because today we're talking about how to take something valuable away from a conference. I think conferences are one of the best ways to spend a lot of money, see a lot of cities, and take nothing away from them. Or you can go into a conference intentionally saying to yourself, I'm going to learn 1 to 3 things from whatever this is so that I can implement that in my business going forward. How does that sound?
And it sounds great. It sounds like it makes it sound like we're professional podcasters and we know what we're doing. Like
Hey,
we've been doing
we
this for
do.
5+ years.
Yeah, longer than most. We just happen to put it into so many different channels.
Yeah.
If we added it all together, we would have like 19 subscribers total. I'm just
And
kidding. It's more than that.
it is fantastic. So at some point, Chris, you should like aggregate all of we should like put together like a greatest hits channel and get all of everything in one place somewhere. Maybe, but we'll talk about that offline. Um, I famously, I don't know how many people really know me or pay attention to what I'm saying, but I frequently tell people that you should not be going to conferences. And for the most part, I feel like this is a misunderstood thing that I say. People hear if you're a new agent, and you don't have a lot of money and you're still learning the business and you're kind of getting us in the swing of things, you should not be paying money to go to a random conference set up by somebody on the internet, whether it's called a convention, whether it's called a summit, whatever it is.
I like that term. Summit.
Yeah. Um,
Sounds almost biblical or
right. If you don't like somebody's nation, you're like you're joining some sort of cult. Um, don't go do those things. Those are not good uses of your time if you're new. If you don't know what you're doing, if you are getting up and running, you should have an upline of some sort. You should have somebody who's mentoring you. You should have somebody who's teaching you. And if you don't, conferences are not great places to find those people. I mean, you could like they definitely could be there, like right. But maybe that's not the first place you should go to look. Going to a place where people are paying money for the most part to talk and try and recruit you is maybe not the best place to go to try and find a mentor.
could it
But
be that some of these random conventions are merely profit centers and recruiting opportunities in disguise?
say it ain't so, Chris. Say
My,
it ain't so. How
my
horrible. No, I mean that is what almost all of them are, and they'll tell you they don't recruit, and there's no recruiting allowed. And yet the reality is, at almost all of these conferences, if you are going to be a speaker there, you must pay multiple thousands of dollars.
Mhm.
Um, at good conferences, the speakers get paid. This
Yeah.
is this is how you know the difference. Um,
Hold on. We don't have a lot of time, but I gotta love the fact that there's a conference which I did learn interesting things from. Got to hang out with guys like Eric Hamadi, finally meet him in person. See Eric Thomas on stage, Patrick
mhm,
Bet David, some good
sure.
stuff. Ed Milet read the book. Um, but the reality is like some people on the stage paid to be there, and some people were paid 70 to $100,000 to be there. And the
Yeah,
irony of that is like nearly biblical in a way.
yeah, it's crazy, right? Um, It's maddening. That being said, I am not opposed to going places and learning things in person, right? The world should not be entirely virtual.
No.
If your IMO is putting on a training convention for your people with your trainers that like already have a vested interest in you, definitely do that.
Mhm.
If you want to develop a relationship with your local regional broker manager for your Medicare thing, and they're doing an in-person like Medicare rollout, definitely do that. Meet these people, get to know people. These are people that are actually going to be able to help you in your life. You could go to something like Christian Brindle's six-figure Medicare conference and get a lot out of it if you're new. I would say at the moment, Christian is the only person who I would endorse to do this sort of thing because he is running it in a much less sleazy way than a lot of these other people are. Not all of them. They're not all sleazy. I'm not painting with a completely broad brush, but like I know Christian is kind of on the up and up. But if you're going to go to one of these things and you've got the disposable income and it's not going to hurt you financially to buy a plane ticket and a hotel room and a ticket to the convention itself, you have to be going in with the understanding that the biggest thing that you're going to be taking away is the networking, is the people you're going to be meeting, the people you're going to be talking to, the conversations in between presenters. Not to say the presenters are useless. Some of them might be very good. That's going to depend conference to conference. Sometimes they're former professional athletes that have nothing to do with selling insurance. But the talking to people outside of the conference and the looking to consciously make connections with other people that are there is the thing to do. And really, really focusing on that. And if you're not in a place in your career where networking with other agents who are, I mean, let's face it, technically your competition, right?
Yeah.
If you're not at that place in your career where that makes more sense than going out and just talking to more prospects, you probably shouldn't be going to these things. You almost definitely shouldn't be buying the recording afterwards.
Oh.
Like, oh, but what are your thoughts, Chris? You've been to more of these than I have. The ones that I've been to, I've been to, um, I've been to ones that have been put on by people that I'm working with.
Mhm.
And in other professional arenas that are not insurance, I've been to kind of things very similar to some of the more large conferences. But some people will tell me I don't know what I'm talking about because I've never been to, several of these very big ones that people are talking about all the time.
Yeah, so I'll share a few thoughts on that. I started at an organization in the final expense side that had an agency convention every year, black tie, training, awards, like really well put together opportunity. You'd learn something, you'd meet some people, you'd be recognized. If you didn't go, you'd be ostracized, semi cult like, but it was absolutely worth attending. And if you didn't go, your business wasn't nearly as important to you. I've been to my share of the conferences where you'd have to pay to go to, kind of fronting for Toolkit and those opportunities. Hosted in places like Alabama, I won't use names, places like Texas on multiple occasions. When you go to those type of events, I think it's important if you're paying to go, you go in there tactically. Like I'm going to learn two things from this, and I'm going to take that information away and implement it into my business. Whatever that is, just go in there, not just looking to come out with a good feeling, hopefully not a hangover, hopefully not gambling if it was in Vegas, like actually wanting to learn something from that event. And
Yeah.
when you go from a networking capacity, there's a fine line between networking, recruiting, and being recruited. I think when you go to these type of events, you're going to find carrier reps there, people that later on, if you've met them, shook hands and were polite to them, will be able to help you professionally. Recognizing that the longer that you're in the industry, the people that are going to stay are going to stay, and they're going to be there in the bottom, the middle, and the top. So being friendly with them is valuable. And I guess finding that fine line between being hyped and being educated is extremely important.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there is stuff to learn at all of these places, right? Like the even the speakers who are paying, most of these people are not being asked to come up and talk because they don't know what they're talking about. You know, even if they get asked to come up and talk and then say, okay, now you need to write us a check for $5,000. They are mostly really do know what they're talking about. And if you're going to pay the money and you're going to go, you really should. I think Chris's attitude is 100% right. You should say, hey, I'm going to look at the schedule of events. I'm going to target the speakers that I'm going to be looking to listen to. I'm going to spend my time wisely and focused and take notes and really walk away with some takeaways, you know, and make sure that I've got 2 to 3 major takeaways. And meeting people in person is different than talking to them online. I mean, it just is. Getting to talk to some of the people, getting to meet somebody like Chris in person, getting to meet carrier reps in person, getting to meet all these people who someday down the road, maybe you need a favor. You know, and it's sometimes important to be able to have that face person. That I will underline. If this is your first year in the business, if your IMO is doing this, go. If you're paying to do this because some independent organization is running one of these, don't. Like, there's no way you have enough money. There's no way you have enough time.
But see, here's the other problem. Even if you had the time and you had the money for one reason or another, you go to one of these random conferences, be it as it may, you might actually end up diluting your focus, because your focus probably in that first 1 to 2 years should be whatever horse you tied yourself to, be it a captive, high-priced final expense carrier, a career model, LOA Medicare company, whatever. Like, for that first year, when your success is so crucial, you should just remain focused in literally whatever they're telling you, because you can make it work whoever you make it work with. And then you go to these other conferences and you're thinking to yourself, well, crap, why am I not selling ACA, LMNOP, short-term hospital, all these things that aren't, I feel like it dilutes the message.
Yeah, well, and it can steal your focus and it can mess with your head. You know, sales is such a mental game. You know, so much of any kind of sales is about how you're thinking about yourself. And it really, really can mess with how you're doing things. I will tell you a story from my own personal life. Going to an event that the insurance company that I worked for when I started was putting on, they would make us go. We didn't have a choice. We would get fired if we didn't show up. They would make us go every 6 weeks to like a little regional training conference where we got together with other people who were in our general area. And then 3 times a year, we would get together with the whole state, and everybody would be together. And the person who was running my team had a very different methodology and a very different way of doing things than many of the other teams that were coming to these conferences. And so I would sit down and I would talk to other agents from other teams, and they would be saying, oh, well, I'm doing whatever they're doing. You know, I'm going around in cold canvassing neighborhoods, or I'm picking up the phone book and I'm calling everybody who works for doctor's offices, or whatever they were doing, right? Different things than what I was doing. And on the days when I would be struggling, because I was new and I was still learning how to do this, and I was still trying to implement, you know, my manager Jeff's way of doing things, I would think, well, why am I doing this Jeff's way? You know, like Doug over in, you know, in Pittsburgh, he's not doing things this way. He's doing things that way. Maybe I should be doing things the way Doug's doing. He's very successful. And it messes with your mind. And it can put you on the wrong path. Until you know what you're doing, like really, until you know what you're doing, you should be in like blinders on. You know, you're just following the person who you have decided is your mentor, and you're just doing things the way that they say that you should be doing things. And if you don't have somebody like that, then like, yeah, you need to find somebody. But going to these conventions, like I said before, not a great way to do that. Um, it's just not a great way to do that. There are a million better ways to do that. Maybe we'll talk about them someday, but today is not that day.
I feel like 2016, 2017, 2018, there weren't any of these random conventions either.
Nope.
Like you could go and pay a lot of money to see Tony Robbins and do one of his things, and you probably learn a whole lot from that if you could afford to do it, both time and money wise. But in the early part of our career, there weren't these different conventions, conferences, summits, revivals, right?
No, they came about. I don't want to name people's names, but there is one gentleman in our industry who I like personally and am friendly with, although I would not call him a friend. But who I like personally, like I have his cell phone number. We text occasionally. Who is absolutely a marketing genius and has set up his agency and lead vending situation, and it is built off of like a foundation that like his father put in place, but like he's an absolute genius, and he came in and invented this conference idea for independent agents.
Mhm.
Saying that like 92% of agents wash out, and we're going to be the group that doesn't wash out, and we're all going to get together, and we're gonna lift each other up. We're not going to be abandoned. We're not going to be free floating. And it's a very PT Barnum-esque type of a thing that he did, and it has been wildly successful and repeatedly imitated.
And the sad part though is
Yeah.
that the concept does make sense. There
Yeah,
was a lot of practical information I took from those type of events,
absolutely.
but the churn was still there. Like there was 92% of new people the next year. I'm like, well, damn, come
Yeah.
on. That
Yeah.
the reality is, before we get to the hot take today and be observant of our time, the conference isn't going to make or break you. This is you
No.
versus you. This is just merely a microcosm of your year and your career.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's really it. That's what people should be taking away from this is like, go to the conference, don't go to the conference, believe me, believe Chris, like it doesn't really matter. But like this is still sales at the end of the day, and
Mhm.
sales is 100% mental, and you are your only competition. It is like tennis or golf or whatever, where I mean, you technically have somebody else you're playing against, but really you're just trying to make yourself better. And if you focus on self-improvement and keeping your track going and listening to your coach, your mentor, whatever you want to call them, and just fully focus and buy into what they're doing, that's where you're going to be successful.
There you go. Ready for a hot take for the day?
I am. I'm very excited to find out what you want to know.
I got it. Something has gone wrong in your business, be it a carrier issue, let's specifically carrier. Something went wrong with a carrier. They're not as good as they should be with something. There were no envelopes in the policies. You know
Oh
what I'm
no.
talking about? Something. The plan isn't what it was supposed to be. The site said they took a doctor, but they didn't. Something isn't right. Do you yell at the carrier with every anger you have inside of you? Get angry at them and think, I'm going to make it better by telling them how bad they suck? Or would you be better off walking into your bathroom and screaming at the mirror all to yourself?
Never yell at the carrier. Just flat out, ever. God, one of my favorite memories, and it's a terrible memory. I hate that this is one of my favorite memories, because the guy that did this is actually a very close friend of mine. But I was in Aruba on a carrier trip, and something went wrong on one of my friends' business. And in the middle of the lobby of the hotel, the CEO, the COO, the head of underwriting, and the head of sales for this insurance company were all sitting having drinks. And my friend walked into the lobby. He was their number one agent. He was their top agent by a lot. Like he'd written $60,000 more business with them than anybody else had. And he walked into the lobby and just started cursing them out, like at full volume, top of his voice, screaming at them about what a BS company they were and how they are rinky dink and they don't deserve his business and how terrible he is. There were 3 days left in this carrier trip, and he went home that night. Not by his own choice. He no longer had a hotel room. within about an hour of that conversation.
Man,
And he did have a plane ticket in his name heading back to the United States.
man.
And his contracts were immediately terminated. And the thing is, this is a useful carrier to have.
Yeah.
They don't care how big you are. They don't care how important you think you are to them. Never yell at the carriers, like, just ever. Like, they're humans, they're people. Be nice, be respectful, but also recognize that you are just one drop in an entire ocean of agents to most of them. Yeah, no single agent matters.
Man, it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks, but it's the truth.
Yeah. And on the flip side, like, if you develop good relationships with some of these carriers, like I had an issue with a carrier that came up yesterday, and I was able to call the insurance company, and I was able to talk to their head of sales, and she knew who I was when I called because we've hung out on the beach and had drinks together, and like we've shared photos of our family. Like, we had a nice little chat, and I said, "Oh, hey, by the way, I'm having this problem. Do you know anything about this?" And she said, "Oh my God, nobody had brought to mind. Let me get that fixed." Um, and it's so, like, I don't know, like, be nice, be respectful. Like, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. And also, they're gonna fire you. Like, it's still a professional organization. They are still your employer. Right? We like to think of ourselves. I mean, we are independent agents, but like carriers are run by humans too. Absolutely.
It's hard. I mean, I'm guilty of it, of screaming with all anger with no direction over something completely inconsequential 5 minutes later. But many of them, like you'll hear Waylon and I talk about, are run by people making an average American salary that
Yeah.
clock out at 5 and could give a flying hoot if this works or not. Like, it isn't going to change their pay if you get contracted 10 minutes quicker, or if the envelope ends up in the package, or if the e-app works properly, or if Dr. Smith wasn't in the network because IT didn't load it in properly.
Nope. Yeah. It just, like, be a good human. Like,
Be a good human.
But I think that's the takeaway from this whole thing. Be a good human. Be a good human and focus on you. Focus on your success. Don't worry about so much what's going on in the outside world.
Be so successful that when things go wrong, you could be like, meh, whatever. Like, whatever. Like, this will sort itself out, and if not, I'm not going to lose my house over it. Whatever.
It's annoying, but it's not the end of the world.
They didn't pay me. Eventually, they'll pay me, right?
Yeah, it all works out in the wash.
It will. Well, on that note, that was today's hot take. May not have been as hot as it was, but if you're that hot, don't call a carrier. Call me instead. Complain to your upline. Complain to whatever you believe in, deity-wise. Just don't yell at them. They won't take it very well. Before you hang up on today's video, like the video, comment below about what you want us to hear, subscribe to the channel so we can continue to grow it. We're really close to another threshold, and the bigger we get, the more YouTube will show this to other people who don't even know that they need it. Nick, appreciate your 23 minutes and 25 seconds today. Let's go out there and have an outstanding rest of our Friday.